Breaking news reverberated through Westminster as Nigel Farage triggered an emergency debate, effectively dismantling Keir Starmer's position in real time on the floor of Parliament. The events that unfolded at 2:47 this afternoon sent shockwaves across Britain and beyond, obliterating any lingering hope among critics that Labour could survive the next general election. What transpired will be dissected for decades to come as the pivotal moment when Britain's political establishment finally began to crumble. The ramifications of this afternoon's seismic events are poised to reshape the country's future, and the next 72 hours are now widely considered critical in determining the direction Britain will take. Just 3 hours prior, Nigel Farage, a figure synonymous with disruptive political force, rose in the House of Commons and invoked Standing Order 24. For those unfamiliar with the arcane procedures of parliamentary democracy, this is one of the most potent mechanisms available to backbenchers, enabling them to compel an immediate emergency debate on an issue deemed to be of urgent national importance. As the weight of his action sunk in, the chamber fell into stunned silence. Labour MPs sat motionless, a sea of frozen faces, as the realisation dawned that this was no routine policy disagreement or mundane budget dispute. Farage's words, carefully chosen and strategically delivered, cut through the room with chilling precision as he formally moved that the House debate the Prime Minister's fitness to govern. His reasoning, what he described as credible evidence that Keir Starmer had knowingly misled Parliament regarding foreign interference in British immigration policy. The word knowingly hung in the air, heavy with implication, unresolved, a poisoned dart thrown with deadly accuracy. Keir Starmer, a man who had cultivated an image of unflappable calm, did not retreat. Instead, he leapt to his feet, a move many seasoned observers now describe as the most serious tactical error of his political career. His face flushed a deep, angry red, and journalists in the press gallery reported that he was visibly trembling with anger, his carefully constructed facade of composure shattered. Every camera in the chamber captured his response in excruciating detail as he launched a blistering attack, accusing the honourable gentleman from Clecton of building his entire career on conspiracy theories and reckless fantasies. Shouting that there was no evidence because no evidence existed, he dismissed the intervention as a last-ditch stunt from a desperate man leading a desperate party that would never govern Britain. The attack was savage, deeply personal, a raw display of uncontrolled fury. Farage, the target of this onslaught, did not flinch. Standing calmly, a manila folder clutched in his hand, a barely perceptible smile playing on his lips, he replied with measured control, a stark contrast to the Prime Minister's outburst. He informed the House that he was in possession of documents, obtained through Freedom of Information requests, that painted a dramatically different picture. He invited the Prime Minister to explain why his office had met European Union migration officials 17 times in the past 6 months, why those meetings were never disclosed to Parliament, and why leaked emails appeared to show discussions of quotas that were never announced to the British public. The reaction was immediate and crushing. Conservative MPs erupted into cheers, a cacophony of triumphant noise, while Labour's backbenches sat frozen in stunned silence, the air thick with apprehension. Within minutes, the Speaker, his face grim, approved the emergency debate. By 3:12 p.m, the gavel came down, and it was abundantly clear that Sir Starmer had walked directly into a carefully laid trap, the jaws of which were now snapping shut around him. Beyond the confines of Westminster, this high-stakes political drama collided head-on with a burgeoning social crisis, a stark reminder of the disconnect between the political elite and the struggles of ordinary Britons. Across the country, pensioners, men and women who had worked for decades and paid into the system their entire lives, were struggling simply to keep warm this winter, forced to make impossible choices between heating and eating. Margaret Wilson, a 71-year-old widow from Sunderland, was interviewed outside a food bank yesterday morning. Her husband served in the Falklands, a war hero, and she spent 38 years working as an NHS nurse, tending to the sick and vulnerable. "I gave everything to this country," she said through tears, her voice thick with emotion, "and now I'm invisible to them. But they'll house anyone who crosses the Channel in a luxury hotel with 3 meals a day." While British veterans, those who had risked their lives in service to the nation, slept rough on the streets of London, illegal migrants were receiving full medical care, taxpayer-funded legal representation, and accommodation costing an estimated £7 million per day, according to leaked Home Office figures published last week. These provisions included heated rooms, regular meals, mobile phones, and cash allowances that critics argued exceeded what many pensioners received. The contrast had proved so stark, so jarringly unfair, that even lifelong Labour voters were turning away in record numbers, their disillusionment complete. A poll released this morning revealed that 68% of Britons believed the government cared more about appearing compassionate to foreigners than protecting the citizens who built the nation. For many, this was no longer a matter of political opinion, but a sign that the social contract itself, the very foundation of British society, had fractured beyond repair. That sense of outrage deepened with further revelations. Data obtained from the Department for Work and Pensions showed that 127,000 British pensioners applied for winter fuel payment assistance last month alone, a staggering 340% increase on the same period last year. These were the people who rebuilt Britain after the war, who paid their taxes diligently for decades, and who followed every rule asked of them. Yet they were now being told there was no money left to help them stay warm. Simultaneously, the Home Office quietly approved a £180 million contract for new migrant accommodation in hotels across southern England. The agreement was signed on the 3rd of November at 11:47 p.m, a timing critics said was deliberately chosen to avoid parliamentary scrutiny, a clandestine act designed to evade accountability. When Labour backbencher Rosie Darfield demanded an explanation, she was told it was routine procurement, a characterization that only fueled the already raging fire of voter anger. Disillusionment was now spilling into the open, a torrent of pent-up frustration unleashed upon the political landscape. John Patterson, a retired steel worker from Sheffield, a man with calloused hands and a lifetime of Labour voting behind him, told Sky News this morning that he was finished with the party, his loyalty broken. His voice cracked as he said they had forgotten who they were supposed to represent, the working class, the backbone of Britain. It was not political theatre, but raw heartbreak from a man watching the country he helped build crumble before his eyes. In his view, the rewards of hard work and sacrifice were being handed to those who never contributed, while those who did were left to suffer, abandoned and forgotten. Then came a moment few, if any, had expected, a truly unprecedented intervention that sent shockwaves through the establishment. At 4:23 p.m. As the emergency debate raged inside Parliament, King Charles III departed from 7 decades of royal convention, breaking the long-held tradition of political neutrality. Speaking at a reception for Commonwealth diplomats at Buckingham Palace, he was scheduled to deliver ceremonial remarks on shared values and historic ties, a carefully crafted speech designed to maintain the delicate balance of constitutional monarchy. Instead, according to sources present, the king went off script, abandoning the prepared text. He spoke of the strength of democratic institutions resting on truth, transparency, and the sacred trust between those who govern and those who are governed, warning that when that trust is compromised, the very foundations of the constitutional monarchy are placed at risk. Palace insiders later confirmed that those lines had not appeared in the approved text, confirming the deliberate nature of his intervention. Constitutional experts immediately grasped the significance, understanding the gravity of the king's words. Professor James Reynolds of Cambridge described it as the most pointed political intervention by a British monarch since the abdication crisis, a clear and deliberate message directed squarely at Downing Street, a royal rebuke of unprecedented force. The consequences were swift and brutal. By 5:30 p.m, the pound had fallen 1.8% against the dollar, and an estimated £2.3 billion was wiped off the FTSE 100 in a single trading session. Investors, concerned with stability above all else, appeared rattled by the sudden sense of political chaos engulfing the Labour Party. Internal strains, simmering for months, erupted into open warfare, a vicious internecine battle for survival. A WhatsApp group used by MPs exploded with hundreds of messages in under 2 hours, with words such as catastrophic, finished, and leadership challenge reportedly dominating the conversation, a digital scream of panic and recrimination. A private message from a senior figure later leaked, stating bluntly that the situation was indefensible and risked bringing the entire party down, a chilling assessment of the impending doom. 7 junior ministers were understood to have requested emergency meetings with the chief whip, not to discuss policy, but succession, the vultures already circling the wounded beast. In Washington, a senior State Department official told Reuters that the situation was being monitored closely, a phrase typically reserved for unstable regimes and potential international crises. For a country proud of its political stability and its reputation as a beacon of democracy, the sense of being lectured by its allies was widely described as deeply humiliating, a painful blow to national pride. Inside Number 10, sources described an atmosphere of near panic, a pressure cooker of fear and recrimination. With ministers arguing openly in corridors and contingency plans being drafted for scenarios not seriously considered since the turbulent 1970s, Keir Starmer himself appeared shaken as he left the Commons, his face gaunt, his composure reportedly gone, the mask of leadership finally slipping. One junior minister described him as a man who had destroyed his own career in a quarter of an hour of rage, a devastatingly concise epitaph. According to senior Labour sources, there were repeated attempts to stop the Prime Minister from responding as he did, to prevent the meltdown that unfolded before the nation's eyes. Notes were passed, warnings whispered, and gestures made from the front bench, all ignored as anger overrode caution, as pride blinded him to the impending disaster. Observers say he had a clear path to de-escalation, a simple way to defuse the situation by requesting